What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my Atlanta Falcons offseason checklist, and hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button, it would help me out a ton. If you're new to the channel, want to see more football offseason content coverage, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. Most importantly, of course, join me for a conversation down in the comments section. What do you think the Falcons could do to improve their roster? You'll see in my final notes, I don't think the timetable presents this opportunity to win right now. I think this is a longer-term project, a couple years in the future. Love to have your thoughts. I think there's a lot of holes that this team can plug away at, but love to talk to you about it down in the comments section. Obviously, this team went 7-10, and you look at that record and you're like, okay, that's not too bad. You could probably make some moves and get right back into the playoffs where you were a handful of years ago. I think 7-10 was about the highest side of variance possible for this team, especially, Calvin Ridley not playing. And, a big part of this offseason is the two people you see on your screen. What do they do with Matt Ryan? What do they do with Calvin Ridley? Trade rumors around both of them. We'll get to that in one moment. 7 draft picks, 2 second-rounders, and they have their own first. So, my mock draft content, I've even seen a lot of Falcons in there. And speaking of my mock draft, thought about doing one and releasing that today, Saturday, when you're seeing this. But with the Senior Bowl being played today, I decided I'd go ahead and wait, watch the game, and my newest mock will either come out Monday or Tuesday. We'll see if I want to adjust my content schedule any. But be on the lookout for that this upcoming week. And then projected cap, negative $5.8 million. Now, granted, Matt Ryan does take up a big chunk of that. They restructured his deal last year, pushed a lot of that money to this season. I do think, despite that big cap hit, he could be on the move, right? A team could do what the Rams did with Stafford and make the trade, then restructure the deal again. So I think that's in play. Additionally, if Ridley gets dealt, which takes us into our first bullet point for free agency, which is more trade talk, but if he gets dealt, that alleviates some cap room. But keep in mind, he's still in his rookie contract, not really making all that much money, but it does free up some space. And I guess you have to trade Calvin Ridley. Sounds like he's more willing for a trade rather than coming back, and that's kind of where he's thinking. And you're seeing the rumors all around Ridley to Miami, Ridley to here there. So it seems like it's more likely than not that it'll happen, which I'll go ahead and jump down to my first bullet point for the draft. I think if that does come to fruition, and I think you can catch a first rounder, right? Ridley was a first round pick, and since then, he's become a star, budding superstar type of player. I think he would have cemented his status as a superstar wide receiver had he played this year. Good on him, focusing on his mental health. I'm all for that initiative. That said, to continue my point, if you do deal Ridley, you probably get a first back. And at 8, I think that's a good spot. If you want to be the first team to take a wide receiver off the board, this class isn't quite as elite, right? No Jamar Chase going 5, no Jalen Waddle going 6. But I think at 8, if you wanted to take a player like Garrett Wilson, giving away my cards here in my next mock draft, but I think Garrett Wilson's a seamless, replacement for Ridley. These guys who natural separators, great burst out of their cuts, and that makes them both explosive down the field, but also awesome options over the middle of the field, working at intermediate parts. But they also have good hands and can go up and win the football in contested catch situations, so you can play with them outside the numbers as well. I think that's just a nice one for one swap. Ridley, like I said, he's a proven star, borderline superstar player. And, rookie, obviously, there's some risk inherently behind that. Also, there is an alternative route you could go here. Daniel Jeremiah, I thought this was interesting. Went Treylon Burks at 8. And you could go London or Burks, whichever one they like more. Is this big body, uber athletic, mega specimen to go with Kyle Pitts, who is very much the same thing. And you could just use that as a way to combat, Matt Ryan's arms getting weak. He's still not great under pressure, especially from the interior. We'll talk about that in a moment. And, if he gets, scared or, panics, doesn't feel comfortable in the pocket, just chuck it up to the big dudes. They're stronger. They win at the contested catch point. Those guys can be your ultimate bailout option if you're the Falcons. So that's kind of an intriguing route they could take at wide receiver. Back to free agency, though. I want them to re-sign Cordell Patterson. One, because for half a season I saw it work, and I'm worried Patterson will go sign somewhere else, and they'll make him just a wide receiver again, and occasional gadget plays. Or maybe they'll make him only a running back and not using the wide receiver position. I don't think that's as likely as making him a wide receiver as a gadget player, like he was in Minnesota pretty much, or in Chicago. I saw it work for half a year in Atlanta, and you could split him out wide and get mismatches against linebackers. He ran the ball well. He has good vision. He makes moves, and he can work in the open space. And then plus, he obviously is a former wide receiver, so he presents some good ability there. Never been a great route runner, but against linebackers, certainly good enough, or even safeties for that matter. So that said, I only saw it for the first half of the year. The second half of the year, it definitely felt like that lost its steam and it petered out. I don't know if that was because Arthur Smith wanted to see what does Olamide Zaccheaus have all about? What do these other pass catchers bring to the table? Hayden Hurst is a free agent this year. Maybe he was trying to see if Hurst could be a part of this team long term. I don't know. But that said, second half of the year, saw a lot less of Patterson, and that is the last thing we all want. And so I hope he goes back to Atlanta. Hopefully we can get a full season's worth of production that we saw for the first 8-10 weeks of the season. And then my last bullet point here: sign vets to small prove-it deals. And in the ilk of the Raiders, honestly, despite I know Mike Mayock was fired and John Gruden has his own issues and controversy around him, but think about the Casey Hayward signing. That was among the best and best bang for your buck signings last offseason. And even the year before that, Nelson Aguilar, right? Small 1-year prove-it contract, worked out big time and added a deep threat that offense was looking for. And some of his self-introspection, right? Like, they need to understand this player is a veteran and the market hasn't been great, but he would be an awesome fit for Dean P. So it's good for him, right? He can have a year where he resets his market value. But obviously, if he gets paid, that means he played well for us and he's helping make us a better football team. And the same thing could be said about, a wide receiver, offensive line, something that fits what Arthur Smith's trying to do on the offensive side. So it takes that introspective period to see, okay, what's our scheme? What's our identity? But granted, we are in year 2 of the Arthur Smith regime and era. So yeah, you have to think that identity and that belief in your scheme and philosophy is already laid and the mold has been set. So you should be able to see contracts, handed out to veterans after, 2 weeks of not having a deal. Maybe they're getting frustrated with what the market has, and they say, hey, we think you'd be a great fit in Atlanta. We have the perfect scheme for you. You'll play great. You'll get a big contract next offseason. And, it sucks that it's only 1 year, but again, if they play well and they get a big contract the next offseason, that means they help make your football team better. So don't be afraid to do just that. And then we get to the draft. We already talked about the first bullet point, so I won't repeat that point. Getting into the second round, like I said, this team does have 2 seconds, and I'm trying to layer these: free agency, highest priority to lowest, and then the draft, first round, maybe day 1, day 2, day 3, something about. But I'll try to make a mention of what I'm talking about in these videos, just in case you're new around here. But Ridley replacement in the first, I think that makes some sense. Then you get to the second. If there is a quarterback available, and that is a big if, additionally, if the quarterback they like, right, the quarterback that might, carry over to the second round might be Carson Strong. And I don't know if this team wants to go from one statue to another. But if it's Desmond Ridder, that is a lot more intriguing, especially considering when you look at Ridder. I'm really on the lower side, but he is as polarizing a quarterback prospect as there is in this class. And I think that's just the QB class in and of itself. He has a good arm. He has good mobility. Good leader. Took a group of 5 team to the college football playoff. That has not been done, and that speaks to what he can do as a player. But he still misses a lot of throws that you just can't have if you're going to be a quarterback taken in the first 2 days of the draft. So some of those inconsistencies as a passer and with his accuracy worry me, and you even saw it at the Senior Bowl, especially in the first day or two from the clips I saw and the buzz I was getting, still a little spotty. So maybe he's a good project for this team to take in the second round, have him sit for, we say a year, but more often than not it turns into, 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks. And he could do that and learn from one of the more accurate quarterbacks over the last decade, someone who didn't really have a great arm and relied on being able to put the football where he needed to. So I think that might be a good pairing for Ridder and for Atlanta to find their long-term quarterback. And with that second rounder, edge or corner, you got to add some talent to that defense. I think a lot of people opt for edge, myself included, because that is an obvious need, but this could also be a spot where maybe it's IDL, maybe a Travis Jones, Devonta Wyatt's still available. Play them at nose. I think Wyatt might be shifty enough to where he moves out to 3-4 D end. People have been raving about the way he moves at the Senior Bowl. So maybe instead of nose, he's a D end, 3-tech. I'm rambling, but a Jones or maybe a later round nose that kind of emerges like a Tyler Shelvin and those specialists tend to do later on in the process. That could be in play in the second to third. But even the idea of going corner in the second as opposed to edge is intriguing, right? Like Isaiah Oliver's a free agent and overall hasn't been all that impressive throughout his career so far. But pairing a promising corner opposite of A.J. Terrell, and if it works out, having a nice coverage unit. You also took Richie Grant in the second round last year at safety from UCF. That coverage unit could help boost what you get out of the pass rush unit. It works both ways, so I think there is, an open idea to which way you go there in the second. Basically, go best player available between those two positions. If I were the Falcons, that's what I would do. And then, rounds 3 onward, I'm not saying exclusively draft IDL or IOL, but IDL, I think a nose tackle would serve this team big time, right? It allows Grady Jarrett to focus on just being a pass rusher. So maybe it is a Jones, or maybe it is one of those, specialists that they like. They saw at Mobile, whatever the case may be. add a nose. I think that would help out Jared a ton. Additionally, just adding some depth there, players who can play behind Jared or, the other 3-4 DN spot, edge too as well. Maybe you find a project you like there. And then also interior offensive line. I know Jalen Mayfield was a big disappointment for a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans. And, I'm not a Falcons fan, but myself included, I really thought moving him from tackle to guard would maximize his strength as a run blocker while minimizing his harm as a pass protector. But really for this team, it kind of played out as the complete opposite. They don't really run the football all that well to begin with. Cordero Patterson did have some good runs, but he wasn't always getting a whole lot of carries. His team played from behind a fair amount, so that strength wasn't fully taken advantage of. And instead, with Ryan's lack of mobility, pressure that got past Mayfield immediately, the play was pretty much dead, right? Like, Ryan has never been a guy who is fleet of foot, going to break the pocket and extend a play. That pressure comes up the middle, blow the whistle. It's pretty much done. So adding some interior offensive line competition might boost Mayfield's play. It also might just give you a better player in that position. And, whatever. You lost your third-round pick last year. You hate to see it, but, it's not the end of the world. It's not your first rounder, right? So adding some depth across both the offensive and defensive lines, I think, would serve this team pretty well. And I'm not saying exclusively draft those positions, of course, rounds 3 onward. But for my final notes, like I said off top, I think there's a lot of holes to plug away at. And again, the timetable is not to win now. I know holding on to Matt Ryan and, if they find a way to keep Calvin Ridley around, it may look that way, but this team is not in a position to compete now. The NFC South got a little weaker with Tom Brady retiring, but I still think this team's better than the Saints, especially once you see my mock draft. I think there's a pathway for the Saints to be moderately competitive, especially in a weaker NFC South this year. But I think this team needs to turn its focus to 2 to 3 years from now. So be patient. Don't be afraid of maybe multi-year projects, players with high upside that, don't have the immediate production that you might want in a player that you're taking in the first round. You might not have a Micah Parsons, but you might have someone who develops into someone like that. Think Rashawn Gary, not Micah Parsons, basically. But that's going to do it for my Atlanta Falcons offseason checklist. Tell me what you think down in the comments section. It's a subjective part of the process, right? There's a lot of holes to plug away at. I've said it 1,000 times. Love to have your thoughts on what priorities should be at the top of the list, what can be moved down. Love to talk about the Atlanta Falcons with you down in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you're new to the channel and want to see more football content, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.